Hello and welcome back to the CleanSlate theme development tutorial series. My name is Adam, and today we are going to learn about what are templates, radius tags, layouts, and R yield in CleanSlate. So let's dive right in. First of all, as we mentioned in a previous video, every page in CleanSlate must use a template. So when you create a page, you give it a name, and you also select a template. So these are the templates available to this theme, which happens to be the CleanSlate Toolkit theme. And if we go back to our CleanSlate Toolkit and we look at the root of it, we go to Views, and inside Views are where all of our templates live. So each template is just a name and then .html. If it has two words, it's got an underscore. We recommend keeping your templates all lowercase, and we recommend also using underscores where appropriate, because in the CleanSlate admin, it will actually capitalize, for example, the B and the A in blog article and create a space for where this underscore is. So now that we've talked a little bit about templates, let's actually go into one and see what it looks like. So this is the Backpage template, and I'm going to zoom in just a little bit so you guys can see. Some things in here will be probably pretty familiar. For example, the main tag is straight HTML. The H1 is just a heading tag. If you know HTML, you're pretty familiar with these. However, there are some other things in here that are probably not as familiar. For example, this R page name, this R editable region name, and this R editable region name sidebar down here, as well as this. So in a CleanSlate template, you have a basic structure like this. You have to have this stuff up here, which is called Frontmatter. Frontmatter is 3 dashes on either side, kind of enclosing the front matter, and you have to tell the template what layout it's going to use. So you do that by saying layout : default. If you remember, we actually have a layouts folder here and a default.html layout, and we're going to talk about that here in a minute. But for now, let's focus on some of these R tags. So for example, this R : page : name. The template language that CleanSlate uses is called radius, and thus why you see this R : pattern in all the CleanSlate specific tags. So for example, this particular tag outputs the current page's name. So if you have a tag in CleanSlate, it's always going to start with an R : and then it's going to be something, and it could just be that and end, or it could be, you know, so for example, this one's page : name, so it's going to output the name property of the page. Other CleanSlate tags could have a name like this, and then they could also have attributes, just like HTML attributes on, you know, so for example, this is an attribute with some class values. So this R editable region name is as an attribute of this R editable region. So there's a number of different tags, and we'll cover a little bit more about that in a minute, but I just want to point out another way to write these two tags out. I'm going to switch over to my code editor here, and we're gonna write these in a little bit different, in a little bit of a different way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these on their own line, and then you'll notice at the end of both of these tags, there is 2 slashes right here. So these tags, radius tags, can be either self-closing or you can close them manually. So for example, I could have this tag right here, or I could write it like this. So in this case, the page name is not going to be able to output anything other than the page name, so this is a bit redundant. This is kind of like unnecessary, so we're probably going to stick with this. However, for an editable region, and we're going to talk about editable regions in an upcoming video, but for an editable region, you can actually have a closing editable region tag like this, and then have people start with HTML preloaded inside the HTML region. So if you have specific markup that you want to include by default in an editable region that a content editor can just touch and type in and click into, you can do that like that. So I can already hear you asking, how do I figure out what tags are available in CleanSlate and what they do? So inside CleanSlate, on the cleanslatecms.w.edu site, we actually have both a tag list and tag documentation pages. So if you go to How-Tos and Tips, click on Theme Development, and then click on Tag Lists or Tag Documentation, you can see a whole list of the types of tags that are available inside CleanSlate. So for example, here we will see there's a bunch of attributes under the page object. So for example, we just use the our page name tag. So to use this, you would add a bracket on this side, add a closing slash, and then another bracket on this side to use our page name. There's a page ID, so this will output the page ID, which is a number. You can output the page's edit mode URL. You can output a number of different things using these tags. Same thing with articles. Articles have similar, our article ID. If you have a blog article, there's file, our file tag, our files. You can loop through files or do other stuff with files, get a download URL, all kinds of stuff. If you are looking for the tag documentation on what each tag does, you can come in and click this tag documentation page and say we want to figure out, so let's say we want to go check on site menu. This particular radius tag outputs a menu, so like this one at the top of the page, it outputs the top level menu up to a certain depth on your site. And so this is what the tag looks like, and then this is the various attribute options. So I could go take this, copy it. Maybe I wanted to put a site menu up here and I wanted to add a attribute to it. There we go. And so I've just took this UL class and added an attribute here, and this will output an unordered list at the top level with this class on it. So over the course of this series, we're going to cover more and more radius tags along the way. For now, I'm going to transition from looking at these actual tags to taking a look at what a layout is and what specifically an R yield tag does. So to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take a couple real examples here, and we're going to talk about what they do and how they fit into what I'm about to talk about. So this is the web standards site, webstandards.w.edu. If I click on a number of these pages, I can pretty much always see that this top bit will stay the same. There's always a masthead, there's always a search, there's always a navigation, and there's most of the time I believe there's this breadcrumbs. Oh, the breadcrumbs changes there. So this part, basically from here up, everything stays the same. And similarly at the bottom here, you'll have a footer, and everything in the footer also stays the same. Similarly, on this transportation and parking site, you're going to have stuff on this site that stays the same. For example, it looks like the masthead, search, navigation, and this PRT status bar, it stays the same across this site. Now, if I were to go down to the bottom of this site, there's this additional resources and footer, and I believe if we click on a different page, we go down, this additional resources and footer thing stays globally available across the entire site. So when we're talking about layouts, we are essentially looking at what things stay similar across the entire site that we can kind of put into one file and not have to mess with again. So when we're talking about layouts here, remember I go to CleanSlate, the root of my theme. This is the CleanSlate toolkit. I click on Views, and then I can click on Layouts. And inside this layouts directory is a default.html file. I'm going to go ahead and click that and open this up, and this layouts file, this default.html, actually has all of the code for example, our doc type, our head, our body tag, and you know, some stuff down here for the footer and whatnot. So this is for this theme, this is the code that stays the same across the entire site. So remember that for example, on this site, that would be the masthead, the search, the navigation bar, and the footer. So those parts of this theme would be put in the default.html because they never change. So there are a number of tags going on in here. We'll cover those in later videos, but one thing that I'd like to focus on right now is this R yield tag. So CleanSlate operates a little differently than traditional CMSs in the fact that we use this concept of layouts, and for example, other CMSs like WordPress might not use that. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to switch over to an illustration that I have here, and you may be, if you've ever worked with a CMS like WordPress or Concrete 5 or some others, they generally have templates, and in their templates they would include like a header.php file, and they include the nav.php, and they include the footer.php. So while they've kind of modularized those parts of your website, your header, your masthead, for example, your navigation, your main navigation, and your footer into files, and then they're including them, they're still including these on every template. So for example, if this is the backpage.php in a WordPress site, you're including these partials over and over. So if I go over to the home.php, you're still including the same code, and this is kind of repeating itself right here. So if I put these side by side, you'll notice that the only thing that really changes between these two templates is the stuff in bold right here. So this stuff all is staying the same, and it kind of doesn't make any sense to repeat that over and over. So that's the beauty of layouts, is that we can actually use this R yield tag and remove the need to have to write this over and over and over again, or write includes for these things over and over again. We can just specify the top of our template in the Frontmatter what layout we're going to use. So layout:default, this is that default.html file that we are looking at right here. Remember, so that's layouts, and then this is the default.html file, right? So that's the default, we're specifying it there. If you can create other layouts, you can create a fun.html, and then this would be called layout:fun. You know, it could be anything there, but we do say that you need a default.html. The default.html is a required layout. Now, as you can see here, you know, so if this is the front page.html, this has like a carousel and a mission statement on it maybe. It's going to take these two things and just plunk them into the R yield tag. Okay, same thing with the back page. It's going to take the back page specific code here and put them into the yield tag. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense. Basically, the layouts allow us to dry up our code a fair bit and basically modularize the parts that we need to modularize into one file, and it really makes things very nice and pretty. If you want to take a look at the documentation on this subject, go ahead and go on over to the cleanslate.cms.w.edu site and click on the how-tos and tips, theme development, getting started guide, and then there's this page on what are layouts and R yield. So this covers exactly what layouts are and how they are different from what you might have seen in the past. So I hope this has kind of shown you what layouts and R yield are and how they're useful. In the next video, we're going to talk about including CSS, JavaScript, and images into your CleanSlate themes. Stay tuned.